everyone, it's Katrina. There are mysteries from the past that modern scientists still struggle to understand. Today, I'll be exploring these mysteries, from ancient bull worship to a secret civilization that once spanned the entire globe. So grab a snack and let's get into it. Worshipping the bull. Since ancient times, we have been fascinated with the bull. But why? Let's take a journey into the mysteries of ancient Persia to uncover the secrets behind this powerful creature. One of the oldest mythological symbols in the world is an image of a fierce battle between a lion and a bull. This symbol can be traced back to the Stone Age. But what does it mean? Well, according to experts, the lion and the bull together represent life and death locked in an eternal struggle. The bull, often seen as a life-giving force, stands for the cycles of life and death. The lion, acting as a dynamic force, triggers the release of this life-giving power. So, together, they symbolize the fundamental forces of existence. But what are the origins of this symbol? Interestingly, it's connected to the zodiac. The Sumerians were the first to map our zodiac, giving Leo, the lion, the summer solstice, and Taurus, the bull, the spring equinox. The lion, associated with the sun, symbolizes eternal awareness, while the bull, tied to the moon, represents the seasonal nature of life. This cosmic dance shows how the steady, unchanging parts of life mix with the constant cycles of time. Ancient people were very deep. In ancient Sumerian pottery, the goddess Inanna mourns the death of her husband Dumuzi, who is represented as a bull. This symbolizes the death and rebirth cycle central to fertility and life. The bull's death is not just an end, but a prelude to new life, reflecting the ancient belief in renewal through sacrifice. Mithra, the sun god of pre-Zoroastrian Iran, performed a famous act called the Tartarian, where he slayed a cosmic bull. The bull's blood fertilized the earth, ensuring the cycle of life continued. This act became a central ritual in the Mithraic cult, symbolizing fertility and the sustenance of life. For economic reasons, though, sheep eventually replaced bulls in sacrificial ceremonies. Bulls were very expensive. To maintain the sacredness of the ritual, the sheep was named Gauspanti, meaning sacred bull. This term stuck around, and eventually it evolved, becoming the modern Persian word for sheep. I think it's gooseband. This symbol of the bull really got around in ancient times. In fact, the Persians were obsessed with the animals. This is made perfectly clear by the sheer amount of bull symbolism that's been found in the city of Persepolis. There are so many carvings, reliefs, and statues of bulls that they are hard to ignore. One of the most famous reliefs at Persepolis shows a lion attacking a bull. You know, one of the oldest symbols in existence? Many believe that the Persian relief symbolizes the defeat of winter, the bull, by spring, the lion. This explanation aligns with the Persian New Year celebrations that welcomed the season of renewal. This lion-bull motif has intrigued scholars. Some see it as an astronomical symbol, while others see it as a representation of royal power. Some even think it could be religious in some way. But the truth is more complex than just one answer. Over time, its meaning might have shifted, symbolizing everything from cosmic battles to the stability of the world. So, why did ancient Persians worship the bull? The bull wasn't just a strong animal. It was a profound symbol of life's cycles, fertility, and the eternal struggle between life and death, making it a revered and powerful figure in their mythology and rituals. And now for number 9. But first, it's shout-out time! I want to give a big thank you to Toddzilla Simon for the generous super thanks. Thank you so much for watching and spending time with us. If you are new here, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button and join the Origins Explained family. The Minoan myth of peace. New discoveries on Crete have changed everything we thought we knew about the Minoans. For years, researchers assumed that the mysterious Minoan civilization was a peaceful people who didn't bother with war. Their influence spread far and wide without the use of force. Is that really possible, you think? No force at all? The Minoan civilization thrived on the island of Crete in the Mediterranean Sea during the Bronze Age. They were known for their stunning art and sophisticated architecture. And until recently, archaeologists believed that the Minoans were against violence altogether. But it turns out they were just like every other power-hungry civilization in the ancient world. Early 20th century archaeologists like Sir Arthur Evans portrayed the Minoans as peaceful people. Evans, who unearthed the Grand Palace at Knossos, the capital of the empire, saw the absence of fortifications, and instead he found plenty of vibrant frescoes. With this information, he concluded that the Minoans focused on art and commerce, not war. Researchers now know that this image is inaccurate. So what have recent discoveries revealed? Archaeologists have uncovered fortified settlements and structures across Crete, indicating that the Minoans were prepared for conflict. Weapons, combat injuries on skeletal remains, and fortified sites suggest they knew a lot about warfare. It looks like these so-called peace-loving artists and merchants had a warrior side too. It appears the Minoan elites played a significant role in militarizing society. Artifacts and artwork show elite men engaged in hunting and sports, which doubled as combat training. Guardhouses and controlled routes within Minoan territories hint at a systemic approach to defense. Coastal fortresses and hilltop settlements point to a civilization ready to protect its economic interests and maintain social order. Did the Minoans really experience conflict? Evidence of warrior burials and weapon-related injuries among human remains does indicate that the Minoans faced and perhaps engaged in conflicts more often than previously thought. This was the ancient world after all. Wasn't everybody fighting? The Minoans were innovators. In fact, they were advanced in military technology. They developed new weapons, including swords designed solely for battle and metal armor, showcasing their sophisticated approach to warfare. They also adopted new weapon styles and defensive tactics from mainland Greece and Central Europe, which means they were part of a broader martial network. This new understanding doesn't diminish the Minoans' cultural and artistic achievements. Instead, it adds a layer of complexity to their story. The well-rounded Minoans may have balanced their love for art with the need for defense and aggression. They were a dynamic power in the ancient Mediterranean world, not just peaceful artists, but also strategic warriors. Mysterious megaliths of Marcahuasi. There is a rock forest filled with strange and otherworldly formations in Peru. It's known as the Marcahuasi site, and it's as fascinating as it is mysterious. So, what's so special about Marcahuasi? Visitors to the site claim to have found hundreds of carvings in the rock formations. But whether these formations are sculptures or just the result of natural erosion is up for debate. There is a phenomenon known as pareidolia that makes people see patterns that aren't really there. You know, like faces on Mars or the Virgin Mary on a slice of toast. Could this be the case with Marcahuasi? Take a look at this so-called natural formation called the Monument to Humanity and let me know what you think. Does that not look like a giant face sticking out of the rock? In 1952, Daniel Russo, a self-styled archaeologist and mystic, ventured into Marcahuasi. He spent a whopping 9 years there exploring the site. And you know what he found? He claimed to have discovered numerous human and animal sculptures. Camels, lions, seals, frogs, you name it, he saw it. Russo even suggested that some sculptures change shape depending on the light and time of the year. But is this proof of an ancient civilization or just a trick of the light? Well, Russo didn't stop at sculptures. He believed Marcahuasi had special energy fields or healing powers that made it a deeply spiritual place. According to him, these energies could improve health and well-being. He attributed the site to a lost civilization called the Masma. The Masma were supposedly destroyed in a cataclysm, but at one point, Russo believes that their empire spanned the entire globe. Where did Russo get such an idea? He allegedly spoke with a Peruvian esotericist named Pedro Astete, who claimed to have visions of the Masma. And to give credibility to the outrageous theory, since Russo's time, many people have visited Marcahuasi, reporting spiritual experiences, out-of-body sensations, and even UFO sightings. There is a story of a man who was paralyzed in a car accident being miraculously healed after meeting a mysterious figure among the rocks at the site. Most archaeologists think that the formations at Marcahuasi are natural, not man-made, and yet fringe theorists and mystics insist otherwise. They point to famous shapes at the site like the Monument to Humanity and other figures resembling Egyptian deities to prove their point. Some of them even claim to have found remains of ancient buildings and a mummy. But where is the hard evidence? Unfortunately, without rigorous archaeological surveys, these claims remain unverified. If Markawasi had been a city, we'd expect to find tools, human remains, and other artifacts, but so far, nothing like that has been discovered, at least not that we know of. Some say the rock shapes change form with the seasons, but if a sculpture can look like a frog one day and a bird the next day, is it really a sculpture? Our brains are hardwired to see patterns, even when they are not there. This tendency might explain the supposed carvings at Markawasi. So, are we seeing ancient art, or just rocks shaped by time and weather? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Elongated skulls and aliens. Where do you think ancient people got the idea to elongate their skulls? It's a truly bizarre practice. But are these elongated skulls evidence of ancient extraterrestrial visitors? Or is there a more down-to-earth explanation? Elongated skulls have fascinated people for centuries, inspiring tales of ancient mysteries and encounters with aliens. But what's the truth behind this practice? Ancient cultures around the world practiced artificial cranial deformation, shaping the skulls of infants through applied pressure. This intriguing practice was widespread, spanning regions as diverse as South America, Australia, Europe, and Africa. In South America, the Paracas people of Peru are particularly well known for their distinctive elongated skulls. Using 3 different methods, these ancient societies crafted skulls that departed from the typical human form. This cultural practice was a significant part of their identity and social hierarchy. So, how did they do it? The tabular erecta method involved applying pressure to the back of the head, focusing on the occipital frontal bones. Then, by exerting force on these areas, the skull would gradually reshape into a slightly broader and more vertical form. Tabular oblique deformation requires pressure from multiple sides of the head. Ancient practitioners used wooden planks known as head pads to achieve this, applying dual pads to exert significant pressure on the skull. This method resulted in a more oblique and elongated shape compared to tabular erecta. The last method, called the annular method, represented the most extreme form of skull elongation. This technique involved using various materials like ropes, compressed hats, strings, or bandages to apply pressure uniformly around the skull. Known as circumferential binding, this process affected the fusion of multiple skull bones, resulting in a circular deformation. Over time, though, the skull would elongate further, producing the most pronounced and elongated shape among the 3 methods. Needless to say, ouch! Many theories attempt to explain why ancient societies engaged in skull elongation. Some propose that it was a symbol of nobility, reserved for the elite class. That way, when they were walking around town, everyone would know who they were. Or it could be to establish cultural identity. Meanwhile, the lower strata theory suggests that in societies like Australia, skull elongation may have been associated with marginalized groups. It could have served as a form of social exclusion or discrimination. It should come as no surprise to hear that elongated skulls might just be evidence of ancient aliens. People who believe in this theory point to the unusual features on these skulls, suggesting that they defy conventional explanations. However, scientific analysis offers a different perspective. DNA analysis of Paracas skulls, often cited as evidence of extraterrestrial contact, reveals a more terrestrial origin. While these skulls possess unique characteristics, they ultimately trace back to human ancestry, challenging the notion of alien intervention. But just because the skulls themselves belong to ancient humans doesn't explain why they started elongating them in the first place. I mean, who would even suggest doing something so crazy? Maybe they really did encounter technologically advanced aliens with bizarre shaped heads. Maybe they saw them as gods, and to be closer to those gods, they started binding skulls. Ancient astronomy. Have you ever looked up at the night sky and wondered why ancient civilizations were so obsessed with the stars? Let's dive into the mysterious and captivating reasons behind this ancient obsession. Being a sailor during ancient times, navigating vast oceans without a GPS was tough. Think about it. How often do you use your GPS? How did they find their way back then? The stars were the answer. Ancient sailors used the positions of stars to guide their journeys. The North Star, Polaris, was a key navigational tool, helping sailors determine their location. Polynesians were expert navigators, using a method called wayfinding, which involved memorizing the positions of stars relative to the horizon. This skill allowed them to make incredible long-distance voyages across the Pacific Ocean. Do you think you could do that? Farmers in ancient times didn't have modern weather forecasts. Instead, they also looked to the sky. By observing the positions and movements of stars, they could predict the changing of seasons. They didn't need meteorologists, they just needed the night sky. For example, the ancient Egyptians relied on the rising of Sirius, the dog star, to signal the annual flooding of the Nile River. This event brought nutrient-rich sediment to the surface, which was crucial for a successful harvest. And similarly, ancient Chinese farmers used a star-based calendar to plan their agricultural activities with precision. Stars were also important in religion and mythology. Stars were often seen as divine beings or symbols of cosmic power. The ancient Egyptians associated stars with their gods and the afterlife. They believed stars were the souls of the deceased, shining in the night sky. No wonder they were obsessed with the stars. They thought that's where all their relatives went after they died. The constellation Orion was especially significant, representing the god Osiris. The Greeks also saw stars as divine. They wove rich myths around constellations like Orion and Cassiopeia, turning the night sky into a tapestry of stories. The Chinese zodiac, based on the alignment of stars, still influences modern beliefs and popular culture today. Each zodiac sign, determined by a person's birth year, is believed to shape personality traits and destiny. Ancient people were not just stargazers, though. They were early astronomers. They meticulously recorded the movements of celestial bodies, laying the groundwork for modern astronomy. The Babylonians made accurate astronomical observations and developed a system for predicting celestial events. Greek astronomers like Ptolemy and Aristotle contributed greatly to early astronomy, despite their geocentric model of the universe being eventually disproven. The ancient obsession with stars laid the foundation for modern science. Their meticulous records and theories helped develop our understanding of the universe. Today, the symbolism of stars continues to inspire art, literature, and astrology. So next time you gaze up at the night sky, remember that you are sharing an ancient human tradition. The Nok civilization. Imagine discovering an ancient civilization lost to time, full of secrets and marvels. That's the Nok civilization. Found by accident in 1928 by tin miners in Nigeria, this mysterious society dates back to 900 BC and vanished around 200 AD. But what makes the Nok so fascinating? And why did they disappear? To start, the Nok were incredibly advanced. They had a complex judicial system, which was one of the most sophisticated of their era. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. The real treasure trove of the Nok is their art, especially their terracotta statues. The terracotta figures of the Nok are absolutely extraordinary. They created life-size statues with large, elongated heads, almond-shaped eyes, and parted lips. Some look downright extraterrestrial. There's those elongated skulls again. These statues date back to at least 500 BC and have puzzled archaeologists for decades. So why did the Nok make these bizarre-looking statues? Were they charms to prevent illness and crop failures? Or representations of high-status people? Unfortunately, the true purpose is a mystery. The Nok were skilled metalworkers, crafting intricate objects using iron and copper alloys. They created weapons, tools, and jewelry, all decorated with complex geometric patterns and stylized animals. And their metalworking skills were not just for show. They traded these objects, boosting their economy and social status. Their civilization was extremely advanced for the time. The Nok had a highly developed system of law and order, predating Western judicial systems. They had courts to handle everything from family disputes to serious crimes like murder. When a suspect was brought to trial, the Nok followed a dramatic procedure. The accused would stand between two monoliths, those large upright stones, positioned to face the sun, the supreme god of the Nok called Nom. Facing the sun symbolized standing in the presence of the highest divine authority. ensuring that the accused was aware of the grave importance of being truthful. This ritual of oath-taking was a powerful psychological tool, compelling the suspect to tell the truth under the watchful eyes of the gods and the community. And what do you think would happen if the accused was found guilty? Killed? Tortured? Nope. If found guilty, the consequences involved religious rituals and community service. The guilty party had to provide goats and chickens for sacrifices to the gods, ensuring that any curse or ill will from their crime was appeased. They also had to supply local wine for the chief priest, who played a central role in the justice process. This ritual sacrifice and offering were meant to cleanse the community of the wrongdoing and restore harmony. To me, it sounds like the criminals were getting off pretty easy. Now, here is the big mystery. Around 200 AD, the Nok civilization vanished. Archaeologists found a sharp decline in pottery and terracotta, suggesting a rapid population drop. So what happened? The truth is, nobody knows for sure. The Nok left behind their incredible artifacts, but no clear reasons for their disappearance. The Lost Tartarian Empire. What if I told you there was an ancient empire that was so advanced and vast it rivaled Rome? Yet its existence has been wiped from history. Welcome to the mysterious world of the Great Tartarian Empire conspiracy theory. It's a crazy ride, so hold on to your hats. So what exactly is the Tartarian Empire? According to a growing group of online theorists, the Tartarian Empire was an advanced civilization that spanned the globe. They believe this empire's architectural marvels, including famous landmarks like the Great Pyramids, Notre Dame, and even the White House, are remnants of Tartarian sophistication. These theorists argue that such intricate structures couldn't have been built without advanced technology. So if the Tartarian Empire was such a big deal, where did they go? And why haven't more people heard of them? The story goes that the Tartarians were destroyed and deliberately erased from history. Theorists suggest a catastrophic mud flood buried Tartarian buildings, which were later excavated, resurrected, and claimed by Western civilizations as achievements of modern architecture. This cover-up, they claim, was to suppress Tartaria's advanced technology, including free energy and flying machines. Is there any real evidence, though? Here's where it gets tricky. Tartary was a real name used for Central Asia on old maps from the 13th to the 19th centuries. It referred to a large area, including parts of Mongolia and China, inhabited by nomadic people known for their horsemanship. But does this really prove a hidden empire? Not really. The name was more about early geographers' lack of knowledge than evidence of a lost civilization. However, Tartarian theorists point to buildings from the 19th and early 20th centuries, claiming they are remnants of Tartaria. They believe structures seen at world fairs, like the 1915 San Francisco World Fair, were originally Tartarian. According to them, Western powers excavated these buried buildings and claimed them as modern achievements. Skeptics wonder why this would be covered up, and theorists have a wild explanation. The Tartarian buildings harnessed free energy. By suppressing this technology, modern powers maintained control over energy resources and the people. They even claim that World War II bombings targeted Tartarian structures to erase the last evidence of the empire. But why do people believe in Tartaria? The fascination with this so-called forgotten empire might stem from a broader interest in lost civilizations like Atlantis. Netflix's Ancient Apocalypse series, though debunked by many experts, shows the appeal of such mysteries. The idea of hidden truths and suppressed knowledge captivates the imagination, providing a thrilling narrative in our age of misinformation and deepfakes. Sound healing in ancient Egypt. Could the ancient Egyptians have harnessed the power of sound to heal? This fascinating idea weaves a mysterious thread through history. It suggests that sound, an energy form deeply connected to human consciousness, could alter life forces and promote healing. Sound is more than just something we hear. It can influence our minds, emotions, and even our physical well-being. Modern practices like music therapy are now part of mainstream medicine. These techniques are used in hospitals to ease physical pain and improve mental health. It helps hyperactive children and elderly patients with memory issues. But what if our ancestors knew even more about its healing powers? It seems like they might have. Ancient civilizations, including Egypt, understood that harmonious sounds could heal. But how did the Egyptians use sound? They were particularly fascinated with vowel sounds. They believed these sounds could create healing vibrations. They practiced toning, an ancient method where they manipulated vowel sounds with their breath and voice to restore harmony in the body. It sounds like something you'd see in a sci-fi movie, but according to musicologist Laurel Elizabeth Keyes, toning could bring people back to their natural harmonic patterns. Egyptians didn't stop at sounds. It's speculated that they built structures to amplify these effects. Temples and pyramids were designed to enhance sound energy during rituals. John Stuart Reid, an acoustician, claimed that his chronic back pain vanished while conducting sound experiments in the Great Pyramid of Giza. This suggests that these structures might amplify healing sound vibrations. How cool is that? Water also played a role in their healing techniques. Late archaeologist Abd el-Hakim Ayyan suggested that pyramids used the sound of running water in underground tunnels to create harmonic structures. In fact, each chamber in a pyramid had specific sounds that matched the vibrations of parts of the human body. These sounds, along with sound healing techniques, could help restore the body's balance. But is this real? It sounds almost magical, but some experts think it's possible. Scientist Itzhak Bentov explained that illness might be an out-of-tune behavior of body organs, and if we apply a strong harmonizing rhythm, malfunctioning cells might start vibrating correctly again. So what do you think? Did the Egyptians truly master sound healing? Do you believe it could help you? Let me know in the comments. Secrets of the Outback. Modern scientists will tell you that dinosaurs died millions of years ago, before humans ever evolved. But according to the ancient Aborigines of Australia, that's not the case at all. Listen to these stories and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Could it be true that Australia's Aboriginal people once saw dinosaurs? Their ancient stories feature monstrous creatures, some resembling dinosaurs. One famous creature, the bunyip, described as an amphibious beast combining bird and alligator traits, might just be a bipedal dinosaur. Aboriginal legends, known as the Dreamtime, are rich with tales of such monsters, which they insist were real flesh and blood beings. But here's the twist. Aborigines didn't write things down. Their history was passed orally, and these traditions can get distorted over centuries. It would be as if a game of telephone lasted thousands of years. You can imagine how things might change. And yet many of these stories are incredibly detailed, suggesting that these creatures might have lived only a few hundred years ago. They could have even existed in the early European settlement of Australia. Is there any evidence? In July 1845, the Geelong Advertiser reported finding a gigantic bone, which was identified by an Aboriginal man as a bunyip bone. And when shown to other Aboriginal people, they all recognized it as bunyip and shared consistent accounts of its terrifying nature. And incredibly, the description matched a type of bipedal dinosaur. There are other dinosaur tales as well. Stories of Burundjor, a creature resembling an Allosaurus, are common in northern Australia. In the 1950s, cattlemen reported livestock being attacked by a strange beast. And in 1961, a part Aboriginal tracker claimed to see a bipedal reptile near Lagoon Creek in Queensland. Do any scientific discoveries back these stories up? Well, surprisingly, not all parts of Australia have been fully explored. In 1994, scientists discovered the Wollemi pine, a tree that was thought to be extinct for millions of years. This proved that remnants of ancient times could still exist. If a tree can stay hidden, could ancient creatures like dinosaurs have survived too? While mainstream science dismisses the idea of humans and dinosaurs coexisting, the Aboriginal stories paint a different picture. So could their legends be more than myths? It's a thrilling possibility, especially when considering similar dinosaur-like descriptions in various cultures, and even the Bible. If what the Aborigines claim is true, these accounts would challenge our understanding of history and evolution. It suggests a world where dinosaurs didn't entirely vanish, but instead coexisted with early humans. Where is Alexander the Great's tomb? Did you know that one of history's greatest conquerors, Alexander the Great, remains a mystery even after death? That's right. Despite his vast empire stretching from the Balkans to modern-day Pakistan, we still don't know where his tomb is. To find out where he is buried, we'll need to understand what happened after his death. Alexander the Great died in Babylon in 323 BC. He was only 32 years old. After his death, his empire quickly fell apart as his generals quarreled for power. One of these generals, Ptolemy, snagged Alexander's body and took it to Memphis, Egypt in 321 BC. Chris Naunton, an Egyptologist, mentions this in his book, Searching for the Lost Tombs of Egypt. So Alexander's body was initially kept in Memphis, but did it stay there? Nope. Historians think it was later moved to Alexandria, a city founded by Alexander himself. But when this move happened is unclear. His body could have been moved shortly after arriving in Memphis, or maybe even decades later. So here's where things get tricky. Historians know that the final resting place of Alexander was called the Sema, or the Soma. It was supposedly located in Alexandria's Palaces district, but apparently it could now be underwater. Some experts, like Andrew Erskine from the University of Edinburgh, suggest it could be submerged, as parts of ancient Alexandria are underwater today. So, will we ever find it? Chris Naunton is skeptical. He believes centuries of natural and human destruction, plus the modern city built over ancient Alexandria, mean the tomb might be lost forever. And even if the remains are found, identifying them as Alexander would be tough without inscriptions or detailed descriptions from ancient texts. While the mystery remains unsolved, there are clues and promising sites. Some scholars, like Zahi Hawass, believe we might still find the tomb in places like the Latin cemetery at El Shatbi in Alexandria. At the moment, though, no such tomb has been discovered. So, will the final resting place of Alexander ever be found? Maybe, but for now, it is one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. Thanks for watching! That's it for today's video. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and stick around for an older video you might have missed.
Hattusa. Hattusa can be found in the heart of Turkey's Anatolia region, the old capital of the Hittites. It dates all the way back to the Bronze Age around the year 2000 BC. If you've never heard of the Hittites, here's a quick recap. This was an ancient civilization and a powerful empire that stretched from the Aegean Sea in what is now Greece all across Anatolia and into northern Syria. They were such a legendary people that until Hattusa was discovered in 1834, archaeologists believed it was a myth. But as we now know, this was one of the largest and most important cities of the ancient world. It was surrounded by a massive wall. The city was divided into districts and fortified with over 100 towers and 5 main gateways. These gateways were decorated with giant statues of lions and sphinxes. Archaeologists have estimated the population of Hattusa reached a maximum of about 50,000 people, which was a lot back in those days. They built dwellings of wood and mud and brick and erected massive temples to their pagan gods. The Assyrians had even established a trading post in Hattusa and set up an Assyrian part of the city. This was not only a major hub for the Hittites, but also an international metropolis with visitors from all over the ancient world. Alas, none of these ancient civilizations lasted forever. By 1200 BC, Hattusa and the Hittites were lost in the Bronze Age collapse. The city was gradually abandoned over several decades, and the empire disintegrated. The city remained empty until 800 BC, when the Phrygians moved in and made it their own. McDermots Castle. The mighty McDermott Castle in Ireland is quite a sight to behold. While it may get less attention than other sites like the Blarney Castle, for those who really want an interesting glimpse into history, as well as the opportunity to gaze upon a structure that really looks like it came out of a fairy tale, they visit McDermott Castle. What makes the castle unique is that it's built on an island. The castle sits in the middle of a lake, about a mile from the town of Boyle. The lake, called Loch Key, holds over 30 extremely small islands. It was the McDermots dynasty that supposedly built the castle in the 12th century, but the history behind it is a little obscure. What we do know is that sometime around 1184, a bolt of lightning struck the castle on the island and caused it to burst into flames. Dozens of people died in the blaze, and several people drowned trying to swim ashore. The castle was rebuilt after the incident with the lightning. It then came under siege in 1235. Cormac McDermott, the king of Moylurg, was forced to surrender to Richard More de Burgh. More de Burgh had besieged the island castle with catapults mounted to rafts and small ships. After the invasion of the island, the castle fell into disrepair. The McDermotts lost all control of it in 1586, and it slowly became the ruin it is today. The ancient city of Termessos. The ancient city of Termessos was founded by a group of Pamphylian tribes known as the Solimi. It was built near the top of the Taurus mountain range in Turkey, at an astounding height of over 3,000 feet above sea level. Construction began on a natural platform and gradually spread across the mountains until some parts of the city were over 4,500 feet tall. While the view may have been spectacular, there were some downsides to living on top of a mountain. For example, the only way to reach the city was to literally climb the mountain. But there were bonuses too. The fortified city was nestled within the mountains in such a way that attack was unthinkable. It was concealed by lush pine forests and endured for hundreds of years in peace. Today, it's one of the best preserved ancient cities anywhere in the country of Turkey. But we don't know the exact origins of the city. Legend says it was Bellerophon who founded Termessos, a monster slayer from Greek mythology who killed the evil Chimera. What we know from ancient texts is that the Solimi were the first people here. They were part of a cult dedicated to an Anatolian god who later came to be known as Zeus. Most of what we know about Termessos comes from much after its birth, when Alexander the Great pushed his way through the area in 333 BC. Alexander compared the city to an eagle's nest and ultimately failed to conquer it. This is the guy who defeated the Persians. Yet he could see how impossible it would be to march his army straight up a mountain and try to take a gigantic city hiding in the forest. But still, Termessos ended up being destroyed. Even though it escaped war and strife for centuries, avoiding ruin at the hands of Rome by allying with the empire, the city still crumbled. Over 150,000 people were displaced when an earthquake in the 5th century AD destroyed the aqueduct and cut off the water supply. Everybody went down the mountain, leaving the city to become a lost ruin. The Kami ruins. The Kami ruins are all that remain of a once great capital in southern Africa. I'm talking about the Kingdom of Baku, a group of people who built one of the greatest cities ancient Africa ever saw in what is now Zimbabwe. It was the capital for about 2 centuries, from between 1450 and 1644. Archaeologists believe the city was built right after the abandonment of yet another ancient city in the area, Great Zimbabwe. It was after Great Zimbabwe collapsed that the Kingdom of Baku first emerged. As they slowly grew in power, trading gold and cattle with civilizations as far away as Arabia and Portugal, they needed a stronghold for themselves. On a granite hilltop looking over the Kami River, they began building an enormous city that would last forever. And they succeeded. The complex had 7 main areas that were occupied by the local rulers, built above the rest of the city. In the open areas and valley beneath, there were clay houses for the subjects and peasants. In total, the site covered a whopping 266 acres. That made Kami one of the biggest urban centers in Africa at the time. It was around 1683 when Kami was finally destroyed beyond repair. The neighboring Razwi people, led by Changamire Dombo, were jealous of the wealth and power being amassed in Kami. So they invaded, killed everyone, and broke the city into pieces. And on that note, it's shout-out time! Want to give a big thank you to Patricia I and Azrael and Grandma. This might just be one of the cutest messages we've ever gotten. If you are new here, welcome! And be sure to subscribe to join the Origins Explained family. Elephant Cave. Goa Gajah, also called Elephant Cave, is an interesting and important archaeological site in Bali, Indonesia, located just 10 minutes from Ubud. The first thing you might notice about Goa Gajah is that its entrance is through the mouth of what looks like a demon. The facade of the cave, the natural rock outside, was carved centuries ago to represent the Hindu earth god Boma. Although to some, this carving is meant to represent the witch Rangda from Balinese mythology. Rangda was a witch who was known for eating children. Historians can't agree on which deity is represented here. Either way, you have to enter the cave through a gaping mouth. Much of Elephant Cave remains unexplored to this very day. The last excavation took place in the 1950s, discovering relics from before the 11th century. Nobody has any clue when exactly the cave started being used by people, nor even when the carving showed up, but it was at least 1,000 years ago. Goa Gaja was first mentioned in literature in 1365 in a Javanese poem. Archaeologists believe it may have been used initially as a sanctuary for Hindu priests. These priests likely carved the cave themselves by hand, then used it as a temple. Would you dare enter the witch's mouth to explore this ancient cave? Or have you already? Let me know in the comments. The Limes Arabicus. The Limes Arabicus wasn't exactly one single structure. It was more of a desert frontier, a line of defense at the edge of the Roman Empire to keep unwanted vermin out of their territory. At least that's the way the Romans would have thought of them. They built the Limes Arabicus along the border of the Roman province Arabia Petraea, separating Rome from Arabia. This was the furthest extent of Roman influence, at the edge of the desert in what is today Jordan on the Arabian Peninsula. It was the Nabatean kingdom who had the unfortunate luck of being the final civilization conquered by the Romans until they hit the desert. The Nabateans had been operating just fine out of their capital city of Petra as major traders until the Romans came along and squashed them. The Romans then built the Limes Arabicus as a way to control and survey the desert tribes beyond, making sure Rome maintained dominance in the region. Rome was so obsessed with holding on to what little part of Arabia they had that they began building new roads. These were to facilitate easier troop movement and the flow of commerce. This line of fortifications didn't do anything in the end. It was built up, and then troops were withdrawn in the first part of the 6th century. Rome was overrun in this part of the world by the Sasanians, and after the Muslim Arab conquest, the fortifications were all left to ruin. Nineveh. Nineveh is located in modern Iraq, but it was once the greatest city in the world. It was known as Ninua, a great center of trading settled 8,000 years ago. Ancient people lived here from 6000 BC until 3000 BC, when it grew from a settlement to a religious center and metropolitan capital. People here worshipped the goddess Ishtar, although this changed as kings and dynasties came and went. What makes this city so special is just how many people ruled over it. 8,000 years ago, there was a small group of Neolithic people living in Nineveh. They were there for about 2,000 years until the Hatti showed up, the same people who built their capital at Hattusa. Once they were gone, the Akkadians took over. This was sometime around 2334 BC, when Sargon the Great conquered all of Mesopotamia and destroyed everyone in his way. An earthquake in the year 2260 BC destroyed the Temple of Ishtar, which was likely constructed by Sargon himself. The Amorites occupied Nineveh for a while, then their construction projects were demolished when the Assyrian king Shamashi-Adad I chased them from the region. King Hammurabi of Babylon took the city around 1750 BC, shortly after the Assyrians regained control. This went on until the Battle of Nineveh in 627 AD. That was when the Byzantine Empire took over the city and brought the region under their control. But 10 years later, when the Muslim conquest began, Nineveh was destroyed and never occupied again. Ciudad Perdida. The only way to reach Ciudad Perdida, or the Lost City, is to hike for hours through the sweltering Colombian jungle and then climb 1,200 steps up the side of a mountain. This ancient city is almost impenetrable and remained hidden from the rest of the world in the forests of the Sierra Nevada up until the 1970s. It became one of the most important archaeological discoveries ever, like realizing there was a second Machu Picchu in plain sight that nobody had noticed. Speaking of Machu Picchu, Ciudad Perdida was built 650 years before, in 800 BC. It was home to a mysterious civilization of jungle dwellers, boasting around 8,000 inhabitants. What's truly fascinating is that it was built on a steep mountain ridge, roughly 1 mile above the ground below. And it wasn't like the ancient people just stacked up a bunch of rocks to build some stone hovels. They employed complex architectural knowledge. They built stone bridges linking various parts of the city, and even drainage systems to bring waste down the mountainside. No archaeologist has ever been able to confirm who lived here. The best guess is that it was the seat of power for the Tairona civilization. These people dominated the northern region of Colombia, but vanished around the time the Spaniards arrived in the 16th century. A mysterious cave. A team of explorers from the Indian National Trust for Art and Cultural Heritage recently visited an ancient cave near the small village of Narangar. The cave is a natural formation in the rock that was widened thousands of years ago by hand to create a cavern about 20 feet deep and 10 feet wide. Inside the cave, the researchers came upon strange inscriptions carved upon the walls. These inscriptions were of odd geometrical formations, animals, and strange human-like figures. And here's what makes the cave so fascinating. Researchers found tools dating back to the Stone Age inside, but have no idea who actually lived in the cave or how long human activity has been going on here. The cave was known only to the villagers living nearby. They say it was occupied by a hermit until 3 decades ago, when a landslide made it inaccessible. However, the artwork inside the cave and the stone tools suggest people lived inside it for thousands of years, back to prehistoric times. It was never part of any major settlement or city, but was probably just a cozy home for cave people to live in. It was then probably occupied by random hermits and Hindu holy men until the landslide made it too difficult to reach. Katna. Katna was first occupied in the 3rd millennium BC, but quickly became a thriving city in ancient Mesopotamia. It was positioned on an important crossroad between the Mediterranean, where places like classical Greece and Egypt were thriving, and Mesopotamia. The city reached its peak during the Bronze Age thanks to facilitating trade between people like the Egyptians and the Mitanni. It was too important to be destroyed by any of the larger powers because of its neutrality. It was a massive trading hub where all different people could meet and prosper. But with time, Katna became its own local kingdom. By 2000 BC, it was the capital of a regional power slowly spreading through the southern Levant. It continued to grow until it was sacked by the Hittites in the 14th century BC. After it was conquered for the first time, its strategic position wasn't so strategic anymore. It found itself in the middle of battle after battle, being beaten down, resettled, and passed from one ruler to another. All that finally ended when the Assyrians bombarded the city in 720 BC, reducing what was once a proud, self-governing kingdom to a tiny village of herders. Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Bye!